What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Let's Ask Paul. My name is Paul Abernathy, your host for the podcast. Thanks for joining me on this podcast. We are up into close to 700 or 800 collective podcasts on all of our networks. So hopefully this isn't the first one you've ever listened to. But if it is, welcome to the family. We have podcasts on Master the NEC podcast, as well as Let's Ask Paul podcast, and of course, Electrify. And all of those are available on all of your popular listening platforms, whether it's Spreaker, Spotify, iHeartRadio, I guess Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all those ways to listen to our podcasts on any of the devices that you may own. You can even listen to on the Alexa devices. So you just simply ask for it to play the National Electrical Code podcast, and usually we're the one that comes up. But Master the NEC podcast is what you would search for mainly on all those platforms, and you'll be able to get the latest content that we put out on all different types of topics. So as always, today's episode, we're going to answer a question that was submitted, and it should be a fairly quick episode. So I know I say that, and I'm usually very long-winded. Trust me, I get people that remind me of that. But today's should be pretty quick because a couple other ones that I'm working on are going to be a little longer, so I don't want to lump them into this one. So this one will be a pretty quick question. And then I'll end it up at the end with a reminder again of an upcoming webinar for those out there that own electrical contracting businesses that you really need to be aware of. You really do. I'm not saying it as a sales pitch. You really need it for your business. And I'm going to tell you what that is. Now, even if you do side work, you really need to listen. Stay to the end and listen to what I got to tell you. Because again, it works perfectly fine for side work and things like that, growing your side work and things like that. So anyway, today's episode is sponsored by Electrical Code Academy Incorporated. That's the parent company where you get all of your educational materials to learn the National Electrical Code. We have the Fast Tracks Black program, which is your base exam prep. We have your Fast Tracks Plus, which is the Fast Tracks Black Plus. You get access to exclusive videos on our website, so that's what the Plus is. And of course, we have Fast Tracks Red, which is our residential. We have a Fast Tracks Green, which is our commercial program. We have a Fast Tracks Blue with this industrial wiring. And of course, we have the purple, which is grounding and bonding, and the yellow, which is AC/DC theory, magnetism, atomic structure, parallels and series circuits, all those goodies that are the fundamentals of electricity. That's covered in the Fast Tracks Yellow program. Okay? That's a self-paced program. You just kind of go through it. It's more knowledge-based. It's not really trying to test you. It's trying to educate you. But anyway, that's an offering that we have over there. If you're interested in any of our Fast Tracks programs, just go to our website, electricalcodeacademy.com. Of course, I'll try to put a link down in the description if you're interested. All right, let's kind of answer this question that we have that was presented us for this evening. The question is, let's see if I can find it. Paul. Hey, Paul, love the podcast. What is the receptacle demand load for a 9,600 square foot office building with 52 receptacles? Thanks in advance. Okay, great question. Should be a straightforward question, but again, we've got to go through the exercises. So look, let me tell you. I want to repeat it again because I know some people listen to this podcast in their car or on the job. So I want to repeat it because it is short, but I want to make sure you really grasp what we're doing here. So the question again was, what is the receptacle demand load, which indicates when you see a question that says demand load, it means that we're going to have to do a calculation, okay? Something, some sorts, whether it's a simple one-step calc or a multi-layer calc. At some point, we're going to have something that we're going to apply some value to in order to get a demand, okay? So it says, what is the receptacle's demand load for a 9,600 square foot office building with 52 receptacles? Okay. All right. So the first thing that I'm thinking about here is, and I need to obviously go to Article 220 because that's the article that we do all of our calcs, right? We've got, if you go to 220, you'll see that you've got the part 1, which is just your general information, right? Gives you those little rules that say, hey, fractions of an ampere. So in theory, if I have an amp value or I've worked it out to an amperage value, then if it's 0.5 or greater, then I round up. If it's below 0.5, in other words, 0.4 or less, then I can drop it off, right? So that's where you get those, and that is in 220.5b that gives you that permission to do that, okay? All right, just kind of the lay of the land there so you kind of know what we're working with here, all right? So what we know is, for this question, we have some givens here. One, we know it's 9,600 square foot office building, so we got some square footage. And we know that it is 52 receptacles. It just gave us, his question gave us that. All right, so the first thing I'm going to do is, obviously, I'm going to be going down, and you might say, well, okay, what are we talking about here? Is this for the feeder? Is this for the service? Is this for the branch? This simply is going to give me the total receptacle demand load. And so I'm going to go to one location in part 3, which is for feeder and service loads, and I'm going to use the information from part 2. All right. And you're going to see how this works. If you're just listening in the car or whatnot, don't worry. I'll walk you through it. It's going to be simple, easy one, and you might run into it at some point. All right, the first thing I want to do is I'm going to go to part 2, which is branch circuit load calculations. And I'm going to look down and find office buildings because that's a trigger for me. That's what I'm dealing with, and I'm dealing with receptacles in an office building. All right, so for me, it looks like it is, if I'm going in the beginning, it's this 220.14, and it looks like it is K. K is in kite, right? And that's about how high Jay was last night on our Wednesday night training. He was about as high as a kite. And that one. So anyway, so we're going to go to K. Now, what does K say? I'll read it to you. It says office buildings. It says, in office buildings, the receptacle loads shall be calculated to be the larger of 1 or 2. Okay. So number 1, or K1, and I am in the 2020 edition of the National Electrical Code. At some point, I will transition to the 2023. So just kind of keep that heads up here on you. So it looks like 220.14K1 says the calculated load, okay, that's after we apply something. It says the calculated load from 220.14I after all demand factors have been applied. So that's number 1. And remember here, the load value is going to be the larger of item 1 versus item 2. So in that case, what does 220.14I tell us? Well, that's receptacle outlets. And that's the one that reminds us that it is 180 VA for each single or for each multiple receptacles on one yoke, right? So a simplex receptacle, single receptacle mounted on one metal yoke that gets mounted to a device box, that is 180 VA. Remember now, we're not talking residential. We're in commercial. This is an office building. Okay, make sure that's clear. The 180 VA does not apply to residential, so I don't want anybody to, kind of go down that path with that. All right, so 220.14I tells me that it's 180 VA for each single or for each multiple receptacle. And a multiple receptacle on one yoke is a simple duplex receptacle, right? That's 2 receptacles on one mounting yoke, right? Y'all with me? All right, so it's 180 VA. In this case, that's what we're going to work with. We got 52 receptacles. Now, we know these are duplexes because it's plural. It's receptacles. So, it doesn't say single receptacles or single receptacle. It doesn't give us any of that. So we're going to have to go to the fact that it is 52 receptacles. But the good news about this anyway is it really wouldn't matter, because whether it's a single or duplex, they're all mounted on one yoke, right? So that's just kind of clarifying that out, how that works. Okay. All right. So we know we got 52 of them. So let's go on and knock this out of the way. So we got 52 times 180. That is 9,360, right? So that is the value that we would get right off the bat for that. We're saying, okay, 9,360, that's my value for my receptacles. Okay. Now, that was what it said to do in 220.14 K1. Now, notice that it also says after all demand factors have been applied. So let me kind of explain what that means. Now, our 9,360 is not going to make a difference in this equation, okay? But I just want to explain to you, if you were to have an office building that had 100 receptacles, then that might make a bigger difference. Why? Because the next thing you need to look at is really, we're trying to get the demand value. We're not really doing a branch circuit. We're trying to get the demand value. But now we're going to have to go to part 3, okay? Because now we're trying to find out, okay, it told me I had some demand that I get to apply. And that's going to take us into part 3. Now, if you go look at part 3, you'll notice that 220.44, and it says receptacle loads. It says other than dwelling units, and of course we have an office building. It says receptacle loads calculated in accordance with 220.14H and I. And we didn't use H because H is fixed multi-outlet assemblies. We'll save that for another night. But we did use I to come up with that 180 VA per strap. And ultimately, that's how we came up with the 9,360. So it says receptacles loads calculated in accordance with 220.14H or I shall be permitted to be made subject to demand factors given in table 220.42 or 220.44. Now, we wouldn't use 220.42 because that's dealing with dwelling units, that's dealing with hotels and motels, that's dealing with warehouse. That's not dealing with an office building. So table 220.42 is not going to be in play for us. However, table 220.44 is very much in play. If you look at that, it says table 220.44, it says demand factors for non-dwelling receptacle loads. Now, in our case, if you look at it, it says first 10,000 or first 10 kVA or less at 100%. Well, that's why our 9,360 is not really going to matter here with table 220.44 because we don't even have 10,000, right? And since we don't have 10,000, well, guess what? We don't need to use this one. All right, so we don't need to use this. But the reason I'm bringing this up is if I had done that same example and I had 100 receptacles, then it would be 100 times 180, and that'd be 18,000, right? So then you would come here, and the first 10,000 would be at 100%. So you take 10,000 away from this 18,000, and then you have 8,000 left. And then it says the remainder over 10 is at 50%. So I would have took that 8,000 and cut it in half. That would have been 4,000. So instead of it being 18,000, it would have been cut to 14,000. And that would be our demand value that we apply. And then we would have gone back to 220.14 K and then compared it to the square footage of the building, right? But we didn't have to do that because we only had 9,360. But I wanted to make sure you understood how that works. If this table comes into play, then you most certainly use it. Now, going back to 220.14K, so we did the first one, and the demand factors really didn't come into play. So K1 was 9,360. Now there's an option. There's a number 2 here. Remember what he said? It has to be the larger of 1 or 2. Number 2 says, calculated, it says 1 volt ampere per square foot. Well, now we had 9,600 square feet. That was what I believe in the question. That's what our value was. And I'll double check. Yes, it was 9,600 square foot. Well, at 1 VA for each, that's 9,600 VA, correct? So the answer to this question is, which is larger? Well, obviously, using the 1 VA per square foot is larger than using the 180 VA per strap. So in this case, for part 3, whether it's for the feeder or for the service contribution, it's 9,600. Okay? And that's how you do it. And so there you get to kind of see how part 2 kind of works into part 3. And that shouldn't be too foreign for you to do that, because again, it kind of takes those pieces and kind of rolls it in. And if you were to go down part 3 and you would have gotten to the receptacle portion for other than dwellings, and it would have dictated that you go back to look at 220.14i in our case in order to come up with that value. All right. Now, in our Fast Tracks program, if you're not familiar with that, we walk you through these steps so you kind of get used to the different parts. So if you really are struggling with the code and you really need that extra help, and then you want a community of folks that can help, we have a great community. Guys come on Wednesday nights to our private sessions, and you can ask just about anything. Jay's there, Schwartzy's there, Brian's there. So many, James is there. There's so many people that come in, and everybody helps everybody out to learn. And I learn some. I always learn something new in these sessions because we dig deep into things. So if you're interested in that, join the program. I like to think it's the best investment you'll make in your career. Learning the code, it just makes you better, not just because you want to be a code guy. It's because you really do need to take enough pride in your profession in order to raise your game to the next level. And that's all this does, really. It does. So even if you're not preparing for an electrical exam, you should be wanting to know the code a little bit better, because as you go to work each day, the less stress you have because you just know things, it really does make your job easier. It really does. I'm telling you, I've been doing this for 30 some years. When you're very comfortable with the code, it makes everything a little bit easier in your job. There's not as much stress because you really know your thing. All right. So I wanted to end this up and let everybody know, if you haven't heard, I want to let you know we're having a special webinar on November 10th. And of course, if this is listening to this after November 10th, 2022, you can always go to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/masterthenec, or you basically can go to YouTube and do the little @ symbol and do Master the NEC, all one word, MASTERTHENEC, and our channel will come up. And what I want you to look for is Tradie Zaps. If you're not familiar with that by now, you haven't seen us talk about it on the internet. It is without a doubt going to be, and we're doing this launch, and I'm going to share a lot of stuff with people on that launch. It is a program that we've put together that is basically like a local BNI network, Business Networking International, same concept, givers gain, building your network, but also putting a tool in your hand that keeps customers engaged. It puts you in touch with your customers. It allows you to have a talking point when you're at a meeting or you go to a customer's house, and we're going to put features on it that your customer will use, things like tip calculators. It's always great, right? And so there's just neat stuff that's going to be involved in that. But the key focus is, one, depending on the plan that you get, you'll be able to send things like push notices to your customers. You'll be able to do in-app messaging to your customers, let them know about coupons, specials. You'll be able to do quizzes. Like if you're an HVAC contractor and you can do a little quiz, When was the last time you changed your air filter? How often should this be serviced every year? Anyway, questions where people answer them, and then it simply goes to a link, then they can schedule an appointment. And there's just so many things that are going to be involved. And I built this around the trades. That's why it's called Tradies Apps. It is specifically designed to help people grow their business. And on our website, tradiesapps.com, I give business tips for local business, how to build your market, how to retain your customer base. And we'll be doing more with that. But for me, it's just an outreach of our corporation to help medium to small size businesses. We're not interested in the big, huge companies. They probably already have an app, and it's so over-featured that it doesn't even drive customers where they need to be. Ours has been specifically tailored in our packages, whether it's the bronze, silver, gold, or diamond, have been tailored to make sure that it's very simple, easy, and efficient for a customer to use. And that means they'll use it. So if you want more information on Tradies Apps to help grow your business, help solidify your market, get into what we call our Tradies Synergy program, which is kind of like a BNI, Business Networking International Givers Gain concept, then check that out. We're going to be launching that on November 10th at 7:30 p.m. And if you're wondering where you can sign up to be a part of that webinar, all you just got to do is go to tradiesapps.com. Again, tradiesapps.com. Tradies Apps. And you'll see the link on there to get to our webinar, and you can click the little thing for a notification, and it'll let you know when we go live. And bring your questions, but I'll be going over a bunch of features. And they're also on our website as well if you want to check it out. But I don't know anything that's going to give you bigger bang for your buck in marketing than what we're launching with coupons, loyalty programs, in-app specials. It's just so much that I think that every business, trade-wise, should have it. You can set appointments. Your customer can make an appointment with you. We can even set up what's called an emergency button. If they need you, they push it and it comes right to whatever you designate. There's just so many things that you put this in your customers' hands. Local news feeds, things like that, podcast feeds, or whatever we can come up with that you think will stimulate your local market, we can work into the application. And that's what it's all about, keeping people engaged. All right, so check it out, tradiesapps.com, and see if it interests you. Let us know. We're really excited about that program. I'm super stoked about it. But check it out, and hopefully you join us on the webinar. Anyway, that's it, folks. Hopefully you got something out of today's Let's Ask Paul, and I hope whoever sent that in got their answer. Until next time, folks, stay safe. God bless.